Hello, hello, it's Tammy. Thank you so much for joining me today. Yeah, I'm actually on it again with regards to making videos and other content. So I'm really excited to be back in the swing of things. So if this is your first time tuning in, thank you very much for joining me. Please feel free to share, subscribe, hit the notification button so that you are made aware of when new videos are posted. You're also invited to sign up for my newsletter, which you can do over on synergessence.com. That link is in the description box below, where you'll get a lot of really cool stuff. And you're also going to be privy to they only come out once a month, so it's not like you're going to get a lot of it. You get a lot of information, but only one time a month. But in the newsletters, I'm going to start doing what I call oil pairings. Now, I briefly mentioned that in the video I posted just a couple days ago, where I was talking about eleuthero and some essential oils. I'm going to begin writing about that, like I said, but in my newsletter. So if you want to stay up, to me, this is like a form of alchemy. So for those of you who've been with me, you're familiar with that, I would think. If not, that's really, I know I've referred to myself in a number of videos as an aromatologist. You could classify me as an aromatherapist, but I really shy away from that term simply because, well, that's actually the content of our context. The reason for this video is that as soon as we hear the word aromatherapist, people already go, well, I'm familiar with oils. And then whatever comes after that, whether they like them or they don't like them, but they're already familiar with oils. And many times in my own head, I am actually battling that particular type of objection. So that's the reason why I don't like to call myself an aromatherapist, because truthfully, the word aromatherapy has been bastardized. It's a marketing term at this point. It's not the actual science of the oils. So that said, I'm either an aromatologist or an alchemist. That's the reason for the oil pairings. And then like I said, I'm pairing them with other plant type products, whether it be herbs and or food-based products, superfoods, if you will, and why I'm pairing them and how they work synergistically in the body. That's the whole point to it. So like I said in the video before, I actually talked about eleuthero and a couple of oils over there, palmarosa and black spruce. If you want to hear that, pardon me, I have an itch, please visit that video. So as I mentioned, I've been doing this for 30 years as an alchemist. I have a background in pharmacology. I also specialize in the study of plant constituents in the area of drug development and the way they affect human health. One of the things that really occurred to me, I want to say here, well, this is actually probably the best video to talk about it in, is about the way oils work in the body. And it's not unlike the way we do life. And that is, when we take medications, they're very, very specific in their action because they only have so many active ingredients. The rest of it is considered inactive, meaning they don't have a pharmacological effect on the system. So in that case, they're very targeted. But what's not being taken into consideration is how the whole system is affecting that very specific action. The same thing can be said for life. And the oils do that. The oils are not as they have very specific actions, but it's more well-rounded. And so the way they affect the entire system. I guess this analogy was an insight that I had had nothing to do with oils, but I'm just going to finish my thought here. And that is that each one of us has our specific actions that we're doing in the world. And oftentimes other people sit off to the sidelines and they kind of look at us and judge and determine whether or not we're doing something right or wrong, and there's also a lot of shoulds and shouldn'ts that go along with that. And what I realize is that although we are making specific actions, how we are affecting the whole system remains to be seen. And there's also the impact of the whole system on us. And that's really how the body works at the same level. Even with the oils, like I said, they are not, even though they are specific in their actions, they're not as targeted because there's a synergy that's occurring because they're 100% active. But we can never predict how they are ultimately going to affect any one individual. That's the reason why I mentioned in the last video, which is it's very difficult for me to make generalized recommendations because we don't know how the whole system is going to react and affect the use of the oil. And that really comes down to this, because I'm having a hard time saying it, which is like, so you think you know essential oils. I don't mean to be rude. I mean, I really don't mean to be rude. I don't want to be rude at all. But we just don't know oils to the degree that we probably need to. I didn't say should. That's really why I'm doing it. I really am hoping to encourage people to join with me and at least follow along with the content in order to get to know these oils in a way that goes beyond our current mainstream marketing. We don't really know the oils the way they need to be understood because they are signaling molecules, because they do have pharmacological effects on the body, especially when they are authentic and general. Not general. Genuine. It's a G word. Authentic and genuine. I'm sorry, I'm not going to stop at this point. I'm just going to keep recording. As long as they are, of upstanding quality, they have a pharmacological effect. Actually, every chemical has an effect on the body, whether it's a man-made chemical or a nature-made chemical. They all have the ability to influence systemic activity. And so one of the biggest things that we are doing with the oils is we are making these generalized statements about them. And whether they're, and a lot of people think that they're not effective. And a lot of times the ineffectiveness has a lot to do with misinformation. Information meaning like you opened up a book or you got on a website and it said this oil was good for this issue. The thing to remember is every single body is different. We're all wired differently. The next thing to remember is that these oils are originating from various parts of the world, which means the quality, not necessarily, it's the constituents, the makeup of the oil is going to change based on locale, based on the weather, the amount of, how much water the plant had. I mean, this is going to all factor into the ultimate concentrated essential oil. The other reason why it's not wise to make these generalized recommendations, the reason why we just can't be using oils based off of a book or a website is because no two health conditions are the same. Although they may have the same label, they're not the same. Because why? It goes back to the way you're wired. So if we think we know essential oils, it's in our interest to go, wait a minute, there's always something new to learn. First and foremost, nature is consistently evolving. That's what nature does. It moves forward. And as I mentioned, no two oils are the same. You can buy a bottle of lavender from this company and a bottle of lavender from this company. Depending on where the lavender was grown, depending on how the fields were sprayed. And bear in mind, even if it says organic, first and foremost, we live on the planet Earth, which organic means life, alive. But beyond that, our marketing terms have turned organic into meaning that they are produced chemical free. But we live on planet Earth, where there's 45 million chemicals. We all share the same air. So we just need to use a little caution and understanding that really, when it comes to organic, there's a couple of things that go on besides just the quality of the environment. some of the, a lot of the FDA approved processing areas can actually have chemicals in them. It may not be used on the plant specifically, but they are in the area that they're being packaged. That's a consideration. I say this firmly because I have worked in compounding body care products within companies, natural companies, and this is the requirements in order for it to say organic on the label. It only has to be, at that time, it only had to be 1% organic. I actually know people who do the credentialing or the qualifying of products to make sure that they can put that on the label. So organic doesn't necessarily mean that it's what we think it means. It's, yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that. But regardless, okay, so you have all of those. Whenever you have somebody else handling your stuff, and yes, it's next to impossible to produce a still that we can start distilling all of our own plant matter. That would be a joy to be able to produce our own essential oils, but we don't have that capability. So we have to rely on other companies. That's the reason why knowing your source is extraordinarily important. I realize there's a number of companies out there that are involved in selling of oils, and I know there's a lot of, there's some degree of education around the different blends that they're offering and even the single notes. And at the same time, again, these people making generalized recommendations is not a wise thing to be doing, because you're relying on them to be truthful about where these plants are growing and what they're being grown with. But again, you could have two different companies, the same identified plant, but the constituents in those oils are going to be different. If I had to say anything else about the oils, that's probably one of the most significant things right there. It's besides the fact that I don't want to come out and be bashing people and saying, hey, look, you shouldn't be saying this and making generalized statements. The truth of the matter is that none of these plants are all growing in the very same location. Some companies are growing them themselves. They have their own farms. Okay, this isn't to disqualify the fact that these are good oils. Okay, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is what's grown in this farm over here and what's grown maybe over here in this other country in the wild and harvested, wildcrafted, they're going to be different. It's going to be made up differently. It's not the same. Whether it's rosemary, whether it's thyme, mind you, there's at least 4 to 5 different, each one of those. Lavenders, there's a number of different types of lavenders. Even if it has the same botanical name on the label, if it's grown in 2 different locations, it's 2 different oils. So how can we be saying that classifying an oil and saying it is good? This is one of the reasons why I believe we're not being allowed to use oils as a healing modality. This is another reason why people do not get the results that they're looking for. Because number one, it's not matching what's going on in their system and hasn't been genetically matched. And how do you do that, right? Well, that's where you get a professional who understands, who's familiar with the concept of, the manifestation of the chemistry in the body, who's familiar with the chemistry of the body, who's familiar with the chemistry of the oils, and who can begin to pair that up for you. That's something that I can help you with. Again, so that's one reason why people don't get the results, because they're selecting oils based off of what's been told to them, but it's not what their wiring system needs. The other factor is that these oils contain the constituent variations, the constituents are varied. You might have more of one. What am I trying to say here? Let's just say we're talking about oils with limonene and linalool. And for that matter, even when you have the same plant, they have different constituents in them. Meaning, what I mean by that is, like, there's different types of lavender. Their constituents varied based on the difference in the plant. So we have to be able to have some level of understanding and awareness. My eyes are drying out from the fan. So I want to stop and I want to pause for a second and just make sure that I'm making sense here, because we have oils, we have plants, we have Like I said, we have a number of different types of lavenders. We have different types of rosemaries. We have different types of thyme and eucalyptus. So even if these plants, let's just say if you have 4 rosemary plants, 4 different types of rosemary species, they're all growing in the same location, their constituent quality is going to be different because it's a different plant. What also differentiates the constituents is where the location and where they're grown. It could be the very same species grown in a different location, and the constituent quality is going to be different. All of these factors really speak to why people do or do not get the results that they're looking for. It's a hit or miss oftentimes. But because we don't know what these constituents are, number one, and because there's so many different types of plants, it's next to impossible to know what you're using unless you actually have the chemical breakdown and you understand the chemistry of the plant, like I said, with the chemistry of your body. And I don't mean to overcomplicate this. That's the reason why I actually have the Aroma Therapist, the lifestyle course. I'm trying to help people, and I'm getting back into doing more content for that as well. It's over there on Facebook. That link is in the box below as well. But I really want to help people understand that these oils that we think we know, we don't really know them. And for as beneficial as they are, we need to understand how to use them. And again, like I said, this is probably a good reason why we're not able to use them, because we have no control over their quality. The quality control is out the window. Yes, there's some testing that we can do to measure the percentages of constituents, but there's no quality control per se, because these are considered bath and body. And for the most part, I like that because it keeps it in our hands. But at some point, we've got to take responsibility for all the chemicals that we're putting on our body. I recently did a radio program, and I titled it "The Smell of Deception." And the point of that is the fact that the body has up close to 700 olfactory receptors in it. Approximately 200 of them we are familiar with their function. The rest of them are still under investigation. The significance to this is the fact that this is the most abundant genetic receptor in the body, and it's not just in the nose, it's throughout the entire body. It's in the heart tissue, lung tissue, skeletal muscle, it's throughout the system, which means that our bodies are picking up on these aromatic compounds. And the aromatic compound, like I've mentioned before, is the shape of the molecule fits into the receptor. It's picked up by these receptors. Because first of all, we have that many receptors, so we're picking up a lot of aromatic compounds. These are G-coupled protein receptors, just like the endocannabinoid receptors, but again, these are the most prominent receptors we have in the body. So the body is essentially smelling everything. Although, and I say that in jest because we're calling them olfactory receptors. They're called olfactory receptors because they were first identified in the nose. However, we've come to determine that these receptors do not need to have a scented chemical for them to be picked up. Some of the aromatic compounds, the only reason they're called aromatic is because the very first compounds discovered in this category do have a slight smell to them. That's the only reason they're called aromatic. But nonetheless, because they are capable of picking up all of these lipophilic type chemicals, also known as signaling molecules, our body is constantly picking up stuff. And we have so many scented products. We have so many products with aromatic compounds, whether they have a smell or not. Which means our bodies are being infused, and whatever the receptors cannot pick up, we're toxic. And another thing to remember about receptors, and this is a good reason why with essential oils, we don't want to use a lot at one time, because you can flood a receptor. And when the receptor is flooded, it'll stop functioning. It'll deactivate itself, and it'll take some time for it to reactivate. The body's capable of doing that. It's known to do that. So we don't want to take up too much. But think about that. If we are being flooded with aromatic compounds, that means we have deactivation happening all the time. We have things shutting down, turning back on, and of course, it's not just one thing. When one thing turns itself off, another thing gets activated because the body's consistently trying to maintain a balance. So in theory, the body's always in balance. This is the reason why I like to talk about stability. And that's actually another radio program I did just last week. I'll put that in the description box below. But stability is hugely important to gaining wellness. So having, and you might be thinking, well, if we are exposed to all these aromatic compounds, what is the sense of even using essential oils? The sense is this: the body recognizes natural. It'll react to the natural chemicals first, which means you can actually potentially override. Another thing to do is eliminate some of all this crap. I mean, this is another thing in aromatherapy is a lifestyle. One of the things I talk about is how to start to create products that you can make for yourself. It doesn't take a lot, and it's real simple. I mean, sometimes you don't have to go to like great degrees of like packaging, and no, oils are simple. That's the beautiful thing to them. They're simple, and they're non-habit forming, amongst other things. That's the reason why I like them for sleep. So these are some concepts around oils that I think are important to talk about. And that's why I say, if you think you know essential oils, please think again. I don't mean to be rude, but there is always something to learn about them. And with so many companies now producing oils and so many companies producing aromatic products, it's time to kind of like give our body some space. And as I mentioned, to use oils in a way that overrides, pardon me, oh, that's itchy right there, that has the potential to override the all the other stuff that we're living with. Is where the game is at. That's really where it's at. So why do we not just want to go out and randomly use oils based off a website or a book suggestion? Because your body is different than my body. And just because something helps me to sleep does not necessarily make it help you to sleep, because why you can't sleep is going to be different than why I can't sleep. And the only reason it's different, and a lot of times the reasons it's different is because of our genetic wiring. No two illnesses are the same, whether we're talking cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, there's variations within that. Everything essentially is on a spectrum. So that has to be taken into consideration. So it's not just, hey, look, I have diabetes or I have high blood pressure, what do I need to use for it? It's looking at everything else that's going on in the body. Examining what else is happening in your system in order to create the formula that's ideal for your body. No, there isn't a book out there that's going to help you do that. Check out Aromatherapy as a Lifestyle, though. You might start to get some clues as to how to begin to do this for yourself. Another reason why they're not always beneficial is because of the variations in the plant species and growth locations. That's a significant difference right there as to why we're not going to see, this rosemary have the same effect as that rosemary, because it changes the chemistry of the plant, hands down. Even if it's the same species, the chemistry is going to be altered. These are significant points to when it comes to helping our body be well and helping to stabilize our system. And our body is already in balance because, as I mentioned, although one thing may be deactivated, it is reactivating something else somewhere to counterbalance. So it's always in balance. It's the instability that we're seeking to correct. And we're trying to restore stability to the system. Because when we have dis-ease, a lack of ease, we can always restore ease through stability. I hope that makes sense. I appreciate you watching. And yeah, please sign up for my newsletter. Please subscribe to this channel. Please follow me on Instagram. All these links are in the box below. I am happy to assist you, and I'm really, really excited to be on this journey with you, and I'm super happy to be back. All right, you guys, take care.